Hello, and welcome back to Tea Talks with OnLadder. My name is Cameron Orcutt. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OnLadder. Throughout this interview series, we're talking to industry experts in the mortgage and property space in order to get a better understanding of some of the big topics in each of these industries. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of a mortgage broker in helping first-time buyers navigate what is an arduous process. And for that, we're joined by Jody Spreadbury today of The Mortgage Broker. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I guess, just to kick things off, tell us a little bit about Jody. How you got started in the industry, how you kind of, progressed through your career, and then where you are today.
Okay, so 2005, I think, is when I joined the industry. Trainee mortgage advisor. And at the time, it was very, very daunting. Didn't really know what a mortgage was myself. So trying to navigate all the different aspects of the market, and I ended up doing compliance. I ended up doing admin and processing. I was a PA for advisors, so got to see sort of the nitty gritty as to what went on day to day, and then qualified myself. So I've been advising for 12, 13 years now, in the industry for nearly 18 years. I love my job, but it's testing sometimes. But yeah, I really enjoy what I do.
And sometimes is right now, like this week. But we'll get to that a little bit later. First things first, though. I guess, so you have a lot of experience working with and advising first-time home buyers. Why is a broker just essential for first-time buyers when they're purchasing their first home?
Any first-time buyer, or actually any even home mover, will know what a daunting process it is. And let's face it, it's one of the biggest purchases you're going to make in your life. With a broker, you're impartial. So a lot of first-time buyers come to me with, my parents did this or my friends did this. Everybody's situation is completely different. And for me, I get the time to speak to each client, connect with them, work out what they really want, and then I can advise them of what to do. I feel like sometimes if you go to a bank directly, you're only getting one lender's opinion, whereas with a broker, we work with all kinds of lenders, and there may be a little niche from one of them that you wouldn't necessarily find from a Google search.
One of the big value adds for working with a broker is you get to see all of, majority of the market, really. You see loads of different products. And that's probably like the biggest value add, is that instead of you just looking at a singular lender and what they're offering, it's you see everything and you're better able to find something that fits their particular financial situation.
And in a more timely fashion, I would say, as well. So I could have a 15, 20-minute conversation with somebody on the phone, and within that, I would normally know which lender to go to, because we know all of the lenders' criteria. We have direct access to the underwriters, so if we need to check any information out, we can do it relatively quickly. If you wanted to go to a bank directly, you'd have 1 hour-long meeting with Bank A. You'd then have another hour-long meeting with Bank B and Bank C. So it's timely, and a lot of people don't have the time, especially not in a standard 9 to 5, to go into their high street and sit for an hour and discuss the same thing they've just done with the previous 3 banks.
Right, and I mean the home buying process takes, if you're lucky, maybe 4 or 5 months, upwards of 6. Going from bank to bank, I mean, I would imagine that would lengthen that even further. I would think.
It's about getting it right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So do you know that you need to go to Bank A? And you're not going to find that information out from a Google search. If you found that out in the first 10 minutes of thinking, I want to get a mortgage, and you've got the right lender first time, you've done incredibly well. But no, you could end up with 2 or 3 weeks of bank hopping before you realise what you want or what you need, or you could have a nice half-an-hour conversation with your mortgage broker over the phone at a time that's convenient to you, and this is what we do. Let us do that for you.
Yeah. So I guess the next question would be, So kind of establish what the value add is here for first-time buyers. But what's like an appropriate time to like really to start the conversation with you?
It's never too early. Honestly, I've had clients where they say to me, we want to buy at the end of next year. What do we need to be doing? I'm working with a couple who just need a bit of tidying up around their bank accounts and bank account conduct, but that's something that it can take time. If they'd already found a property and they were at risk of losing this property because their bank statements were in a little bit of a pickle, that's quite upsetting situation to be in. A lot of what we do is specialist and complex, so self-employed people, people who maybe need to tidy up a few things on their credit file as well,
Right.
or just knowing how much deposit you need to have, how much you need to have in savings for stamp duty, legal fees, surveys, because it's not just about the deposit itself. You need to have a certain amount of cash just for the miscellaneous costs that no one really thinks about when it comes to buying a property.
Right. So there's kind of this this kind of checklist that every first-time buyer needs to have, but because they've never gone through the process, they might miss a few things. Obviously, everyone
Exactly.
says, I need a deposit or I need a mortgage, but then they don't necessarily think about the stamp duty aspects.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. But I guess, are there any stories, like working with first-time buyers that kind of stand out to you that like really kind of highlights some of the things that we just talked about?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. I've got somebody who was employed for a very, very long time, and situation changed. They ended up going self-employed on sort of a contractor role. It was by pure chance that they were speaking to another contractor in that company, and she said, I'm never going to be able to buy a house, ever. And the guy sort of said to her, what makes you think that? Oh, because I'm a contractor, because my income's made up of this, this and this. And he just went, oh, speak to my girl. So she calls me, I'm never going to be able to get a mortgage. Okay, 6 months later, when she's got the keys to her new place and she's absolutely over the moon,
Yeah.
what made you think you couldn't get a mortgage?
Yeah.
And that does happen a lot. People don't seem to realise that even if you are self-employed, you can still get a mortgage. If you've had bad credit in the past, that doesn't last forever. You will still be able to get a mortgage. But part of the conversation with a broker is, if you can't get a mortgage now, when can you? And what do you need to aim for? And so many clients call me and say, oh, I've been online or I've been to a bank. They've just said no, and I don't know why. So quite a lot of our job is education, just helping people understand what the potential pitfalls are, what the potential hurdles are, how to overcome them. If it's a no now, hopefully it won't be a no forever, but this is what you need to do, this is what you need to aim for to get yourself on the ladder.
Right. No, I think it's interesting how you were talking about like everyone's different. Everyone has like different parts of their financial profile that maybe they need to tweak or here and there. But sometimes it's like a little bit. It's something you can't really get around. So like the self-employment thing, like they thought that that home buyer that you mentioned, they thought that they couldn't get the loan that they needed and they probably were just thinking they had probably heard about how, say, some of the larger banks, how they typically look for more plain vanilla mortgage lenders. But there's actually this there's a lot of competition in the lending space. There's a lot of different other options, other banks that you can go to, building societies or even specialist lenders that could potentially help them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a different setup for everybody. And don't get me wrong, there are situations where we have to say to people, you can't quite do this now, but actually in 18 months you can. So keep doing this, this and this, keep saving, keep making sure that your bank account looks good. Don't keep going into your overdraft, that sort of thing. There's so many lenders, there's so much competition with specialist lending. And I do think with what's going to be happening over the next couple of years, specialist lending is going to be very, very important. And actually the specialist lenders have shown huge support for buyers and people who are remortgaging off the back of COVID.
Right.
Self-employed people who have maybe had a questionable year when we had several lockdowns.
Right.
but have then shown that off the back of that, their business has bounced back and is potentially better than before COVID. So why penalise them for having... We all had a terrible year.
Right.
Why penalise the self-employed people for it?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Because of COVID and now the cost of living crisis, like this, it's going to be another wave of people with some sort of adverse credit on their profile, on their credit report, where lenders are going to need to be more flexible in order to take on
You'd
these
be
clients.
surprised, actually, how many high street lenders are understanding of little credit blips. But if you don't know that criteria, and it's definitely not well published, would you know to go to lender A because you've got a little niggle of less than £200 on your credit file and it's over 18 months old? And that's kind of the sort of general criteria that goes with it. But there are then specialist lenders who deal with slightly bigger niggles. You've just got to put a strong enough case together to a lender to say, well, it was a one-off or it was a bad time in life, and now you're coming out the other side of it. It shouldn't impact you forever.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I guess another... So we kind of talked about this, or I kind of alluded to this before, but there was the pandemic, and yes, things have gone back to normal for the most part, but we're still...
What is normal?
I know, right? No, that's a good point. There is nothing. There is no normal anymore. It's just what we got, and but yeah, COVID. The pandemic is. We largely have gotten over that, but we're still kind of dealing with the after effects. And a big part of that is over the past, and more acutely this week, but also over the past, probably 9 months, because inflation has started to kind of take hold in the market. Interest rates have started to go up, and the energy crisis due to geopolitical conflicts that are going on right now. There's a lot happening that's going to ultimately affect the affordability for first-time buyers, for sure. Who are just trying to get on the property ladder. Affordability is already stretched for them, but then also remortgagors, just trying to. They're already in the house. They've already proven that they can own a home. Because interest rates are going up, they're going to be stretched too. How do you see the broker interacting with customers in that way to kind of help them get around the next 6 to 12 months?
So I think part of what a lot of the general public don't know is lenders have always had these sort of stress tests in the background. So as much as you might say, oh, I can afford my mortgage when it's on 1.5%, that's fine. But lenders have been giving out mortgages based on, could you still afford this if mortgage rates were 5 or 6%?
Right.
Because they know that we've been there, we've had those sorts of rates in the past. So I have had people say to me, oh, I can afford far more than that. But actually, when you look at it, the situation that some people are in now, where a couple of years ago their mortgage might have seemed too affordable, but now it might be a bit of a stretch. Lenders wouldn't give you those amounts if they didn't think you could cope. But unfortunately, I don't think the cost of energy prices and food and stuff increasing, that was never part of the stress test.
It's kind of a full court press.
So it's a bit of an extra. Something I have been doing with my first-time buyers over the last few months is, here's what rates look like now, but if you don't find a property for the next couple of weeks, rates might have gone up a little bit. Where does that sit within your budget? If you're saying to me, you can afford £1,500 a month, I'm telling you at the moment the mortgage is £1,400 a month. However, in a month or two's time, it might be £1,600 a month. So they're prepared. They know what's happening. With some first-time buyers, they've potentially never rented. They've lived with parents. They've potentially not paid bills. They've not had to do food shopping. So when we're looking at how much they're saving each month, we'll do a full budget planner with them. A lot of people go, oh, gas, £30 a month. Oh, if only. Electric, £25 a month. Monthly, not what feels like it's going to be daily. When we sort of say to them, you're paying X amount into your savings each month, that's going to be sort of in line with what your bills are going to be. And we try to make sure that people are prepared for it. Send to a first-time buyer, go and do a food shop. Go and do the food shop for your family at home and just get an idea of what it costs. And all the add-ons that you completely forget you need when you own a home. Window cleaner. How ridiculous. But it's all of those little things. And I think, again, the importance of having a broker is someone who's going to sit down with you and go through all of those things, who's not your mum. No one wants to be told by their mum, remember that you've got to buy washing powder. But they do want someone that they can talk to and they can connect with, and don't feel like they're being patronised, but feel like they can have their own opinion and their own concerns, and they are doing it by themselves potentially.
Yeah. So really, it's kind of you're there just to kind of as like kind of a therapist, and to help them with
I
the
have
stress.
been called a therapist about 15 times yesterday alone. That is part of having a broker. I've turned into clients' best friends. Some of them don't want to tell their friends they're buying properties just in case it doesn't go well, and they don't want to, be embarrassed and have to backtrack and say, oh, I'm not buying now. So some people do keep it quite quiet if they're buying a property, especially for the first time, because it can be quite daunting. But some people don't have close family to talk to. Some people don't want to talk to their family about it. So we become the best friend, the therapist, the person who's kind of talking you down off of a ledge when it's all going terribly. But also the person who's just going to give you straight advice.
That's a bit about how you're like kind of managing the borrower. But obviously you as a broker, you're kind of like, you're the intermediary between the broker and also the lender. In the current environment, things are tough. There was loads of lenders that just pulled a lot of their fee-paying products to this, and they're doing it for good reasons. Obviously, ultimately, because interest rates are going up, they're concerned about funding and making sure that they're not making a loss on any new business that they're taking on. But even though that may be the case, you still have to kind of sort through that and kind of translate what the lender is doing to the borrower, and to also make sure that the borrower stays with the lender because they want to get that home ultimately. So can you talk a bit more about that and just how it's been recently? Because it's very acute this week, but this has kind of been going on for a few months, this kind of balancing act.
The last couple of months have been tough, and as we keep saying to our clients, when you've submitted an application, that's your rate secured. As long as we can give the lender all of the relevant paperwork, they'll then issue the mortgage offer. Your mortgage offer is then valid for usually 6 months. Lenders aren't extending offers at the moment, so that is then your 6-month window to get all of this done and in place. And a lender is only going to retract an offer if something really drastic has happened. So when you get your mortgage offer, please don't go and then take out a very expensive car finance or buy a sofa on finance for the property you don't even live in yet, because some lenders will credit check you right at the very end, just before you're getting your keys, and you don't want them to retract the offer at the last minute. I think what's happened over the last couple of days hasn't really been well explained in the tabloids as such, because lenders pulling out of lending is quite a sensational headline when it's not strictly true. If you have your mortgage offer should be secure. If your application is in and submitted, it should be secure. What a lot of lenders have done over the last couple of days is they've stopped accepting new applications. A couple of lenders did it Monday afternoon. Tuesday, it was happening every 20 minutes with a different lender sending emails. Some lenders were saying with immediate effect. So if that email came out at 11 a.m, that was it. Gone, done, no more applications today, thank you. Some lenders were giving us a grace period of until 5 p.m, until 8 p.m. So I know there was a lot of people in my industry having very long, late days yesterday. This morning, there are still a lot of lenders lending. There are still a lot of products out there. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's not, there are no mortgage products on the entire market. Slightly restricted this morning, yes. But there are still options. However, the lenders are all doing this for a reason. They can't all just pull out of lending for the sheer fun of it. But they all want to take stock, get a handle on what's happening, and plan for what's going to happen over the next couple of months. We have seen this, this did happen when the first lockdown hit.
Yeah.
A lot of lenders paused lending, a lot of lenders paused certain elements of criteria. We had a point in various points of 2020 where you couldn't get a mortgage with a 5% deposit. You couldn't get a mortgage with a 10% deposit. Some lenders were not giving mortgages to self-employed people. Some lenders weren't lending on new builds, but there was always an option from elsewhere. And I guess this is another bonus of using a broker. Well, I say I'm supposed to know which lenders are in the mix at the moment. It's kind of hard to keep up when 20-something lenders all change in one day. But if you had committed to one bank and you'd spent, a couple of weeks going into that particular bank, setting all of your paperwork up, if you still haven't found a property and they don't have any rates when you do find a property next week, you kind of have to start the whole process again. Whereas anybody dealing with a broker will potentially have had a frazzled call in the last 2 days saying, right, get all of this paperwork to me, we'll secure this, you'll be fine. Anyone who's not yet found a property, when it comes to it, you go back to your broker is highly likely to say to you, this rate I quoted for you at the beginning is no longer available, neither is this lender. However, here's your alternative. And it's unlikely that there won't be an alternative out there.
No, that's definitely the value of brokers is things change, things evolve. Sometimes they happen very fast and all at once, but still able to, to make sure that, a first-time buyer or just a mortgage, a home mover is not left out to dry. And so that they can reload.
And again, it's part of the education. Yesterday my out of office had just some stock information on it because by 9:30 in the morning, I think I'd had 10 frazzled calls from people saying, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does it mean? We sent out mass emails to all of our clients to say, if you're at this stage, it's how it affects you. If you're at this stage, this is how it affects you. Because if people don't have the right information, they'll panic, they'll worry. We don't want people having sleepless nights for something they really don't need to be worrying about. If you've got a mortgage offer that's valid for another 4 months and you're moving in 2 weeks, there is no sleepless nights needed at all. Don't make yourself any more stressed than you need to be.
Times are tough enough.
Exactly.
Things are obviously very complicated right now, and it's still going to remain complicated just because of all the geopolitical issues that are ongoing, inflation. There's the energy crisis. Affordability will be stretched ultimately, and prices are not going to take a meaningful dip because there's a low amount of housing stock in the UK currently. So things are going to be a little bit precarious for the time being, likely. But with that in mind, just like going forward over the next year, 2 years, or beyond, how do you see the role evolving over time?
I think a mortgage broker is going to become more important than ever for first-time buyers just trying to navigate an ever-changing market. Sometimes first-time buyers call me and say, I found this, this and this online. And sometimes they just want clarification. They just want reassurance of what they found is accurate. Even if I tell them something's accurate today, it might not be next month because the market does change so rapidly. I have clients who I've remortgaged or moved them every couple of years for the last decade. They still come back to me because they still want the advice. They still want the extra reassurance or a little bit of hand holding that in this massive financial decision that they're making, they've got somebody that they can trust to help them along the way. I would imagine, if we do have a questionable few months, optimistically saying months and not years, if we do have a few tough months ahead, then especially first-time buyers, they're going to need somebody who they can trust, who is potentially going to be proactive in telling them what changes within the market. We did have a point in 2020 when there were no 5% deposit mortgages. Lenders were dipping their toe back into the 10% deposit market. But again, it was changing daily. So one day it was lenders 1, 2, and 3 who had 10% deposit mortgages. The following week it was lenders A, B, and C who had those mortgages. So for somebody who potentially has gone direct, if you've got your approval here and it's not available next week, well, if you found a property, you kind of need it to be available, or you need somebody who's on the ball to say, well, this one's not okay, but this is the one you're going for today.
So it's still going to be an incredibly important role as things go forward, because things aren't going back to normal, not yet.
Be
at least.
kind to your mortgage broker, because they are probably very stressed.
Yeah.
And for every first-time buyer who is worried or panicky, as much as it's the most important thing to them, it's very important to me, but I probably have 30 of them all at once.
Right. But I guess on that note, I guess that we can probably wrap it up then. Jody, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.